Okay, here's another short video, kind of talking about a topic that I think will be buried, unfortunately, very fast. But it's a follow-up to a story that came out. I think it was 3 weeks ago, if I'm not mistaken. Could be less. Where Vanessa Trump, who is President Trump's daughter-in-law, was, she was threatened and exposed to white powder that was sent to her in the mail by some sort of weirdo. And this comes at a time, and again, I think we're all very we're not pleased right now at all. I'm actually kind of watching what's happening with Donald Trump and this gun control crap that's going on, and I'm trying to figure out what the fuck is the guy thinking. Gun control will not actually save people's lives if people have the will and the resourcefulness to carry out some sort of horrible act, whatever it is, against whoever it is. I think that they will. I don't believe that gun control is actually going to lower the amount of crime and murders that occur in the country, because I've talked before about how people don't realize that a lot of even the illegal guns that are found, and people that are arrested with them, they don't get prosecuted, so it's virtually useless. Gun laws as they are very they're not effectively prosecuted, and many of the people who are not convicted, even though they possess illegal guns, the main cause is because there's no room in the prison system. We do have an overloaded prison system. That's something that I'll agree with people on the left on. I'm not quite sure what the solution is. I would say some of the laws have to be thrown out. There's certain, especially with recreational drugs. I don't think people should be in prison for that if we can help it. Okay, I think that there's more important things to do than have people live on the state dime because they sell some weed. Okay, I'm not telling people to smoke weed. I'm just saying that selling it should not mean that you're going to prison. But to the story, Massachusetts man charged with sending an envelope with white powder to Donald Trump. This is from ABC 7 in Boston. So this isn't some sort of, freak website that is, your Newswire or something. I don't really trust your Newswire, which I think is I think that's Bill Mitchell's group, but I'm not sure. It says a Massachusetts man has been charged with sending a letter with a white powder to Donald Trump Jr. that landed his wife, Vanessa, in the hospital. Daniel Frisello of Beverly, Massachusetts, was arrested Thursday. He is expected to appear in federal court in Worcester later Thursday. It could not immediately be determined if he has a lawyer. Federal authorities say he also sent letters containing powder to 4 other people, including the office of Senator Debbie Stabenow of Michigan. The letter to the president's son was opened by Vanessa Trump on February 12th. She called 911 and reported she was coughing and felt nauseous. She was hospitalized briefly. The substance in the letter turned out to be cornstarch. Now, yes, this is a false alarm. So the question is, what will he be charged with? I don't know. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. Maybe terroristic threats, just putting it out there. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But this is a point where I say to people who are pro-gun control that you can get fucked, because obviously people who want to commit a crime are going to commit a crime. Doesn't matter how they're retarded. They in this case, this guy, he also threatened a U.S. senator who happens to be a Democrat. So when you threaten people on both sides of the political spectrum, and one of them happens to also be super rich, that's not exactly a great choice. And it also turns out that it was a dummy threat. So what's he going to do? Say, oh, I was only trying to make a political statement. Well, no, that's not the way you do it. This is actually, I guess criminal mischief could be added to it. But the anthrax scare of the it was in the 90s, it was the 2000s after September 11th. Um, that was a serious period. That was a serious period where people. I remember one of the funniest things was that people were asking their IT people at their companies whether it was safe to open their email because they thought there could be anthrax in it. But anthrax could be a real a bioweapon that could. And I have here from University of Virginia today from 2012. It says UVA researchers find anthrax can grow and reproduce in soil. So it's not as if you need some sort of elaborate system to grow anthrax. Anthrax is a bacteria. You might know. It's a kind of synthetically developed bioweapon, but it's still a bioweapon. It says anthrax has the unexpected ability to grow and reproduce while lurking in soil, increasing the deadly bacteria's chances to infect cattle and other mammals, researchers at the University of Virginia School of Medicine have discovered. Until now, experts have believed that anthrax spores remain dormant in soil until eaten by cattle, then germinate and cause a deadly disease. But UVA researchers have found that the spores can attack a common soil and water amoeba and Amoeba castellani, turning these single-celled organisms into anthrax incubators. These amoeba normally eat bacteria and kill them, but Bacillus anthracis, which is the taxonomic name for anthrax, has figured out some way to manipulate that amoeba so it can actually grow inside the amoeba and increase its numbers. So this is kind of scary. The process, he notes, gives the anthrax a selective advantage. So I'm not really a biology guy, so I'm really relying on the source here. I'm a little more of a physics person. The interactions with the amoeba essentially are making certain that the anthrax has the tools to kill the amoeba, and those same tools are potentially being used to infect animals and humans, he said. The discovery helps answer long-standing questions about the bacteria and may lead to new techniques to control anthrax and prevent infection around the world. Anthrax outbreaks typically occur after rainy weather and warm months, usually striking animals that graze in depressions where the grass is greenest. Scientists have commonly thought that rainwater runoff was concentrating spores in low-lying areas. The conclusion was logical based on what science knew about anthrax. So this basically says that you can have a weapons grade bioweapon. So I mean that's kind of redundant, but a weapons grade bio microbial threat. It can just thrive in soil. That's kind of that's pretty unnerving if you think about it. So think about it this way: we've had very few bioweapons attacks so far. Thank God. But it could happen, and the people who are talking about gun control have to realize that the threats are going to get more sophisticated as the future goes on. And maybe I'm simplifying it. There's probably a lot of risks to carrying out a bioweapon attack. First of all, the person committing the attack could accidentally risk exposure himself or herself, right? Because it's not like you can just walk around with some friggin' anthrax and with a salt shaker and just hey. That's not exactly how it works. I mean, I'm assuming that there's some risk, topical risk for infection from anthrax. It's really fucked up if you think about it. It kind of worries me that we're living in a world where this type of stuff. Because honestly, I think bioweapons are a step below nuclear weapons in terms of cruelty, because you're really talking about having people get eaten alive by something as opposed to just vaporized. So it's pretty worrying. this guy was fucked in the head. And the gun control people, again, they can get fucked. Also, by the way, all these gun control people that are complaining about people criticizing certain people that are on TV, talking about a certain event from the past couple of weeks, saying, "Oh, you have no decency. How can you attack survivors of a tragedy or whatever?" Well, when this lady, Vanessa Trump, was attacked, even though it was a prank attack that was not, it was apparently not real, the actual powder. People were cracking jokes. They didn't know yet whether it was actual bioweapons or not. They were saying, well, what the fuck do we care? I mean, I bet it was cocaine that she sent herself. That was one of the funniest reactions that I saw. It was funny, not that the joke was funny. It's funny that people who consider themselves empathetic, they always talk about, people who voted for Trump, they have no empathy. They're basically animals or whatever. Well, this woman who has a family, you don't know her at all, might be a nice woman, might not be, but she was threatened with basically a possible weapon that it's not a very easy death from anthrax or any of these other uh, bioweapons. It's not something you would wish on anybody that you know, probably. Uh, again, there's all sorts of weird freaks out there, but yeah, this was this was an episode where I would say that this is more proof that people are willing to do things if they're committed to something. And school shooters, I don't know what the hell they're committed to. In many ways, they're committed to their own fame. What about this Mark David Chapman, the guy who killed John Lennon? Uh, he was doing it, I believe, because he thought John Lennon was practicing witchcraft or something. John Hinckley was trying to get Jodie Foster's attention, right? That's mental illness. That has nothing to do with the weapon in question. Also, I think in both cases they used revolvers, and those are pretty easy to fabricate. So, I'm not trying to come here and say, yeah, we need everybody to own a gun, and we need people to that an armed society will prevail or whatever. I do think a lot of people should consider owning a firearm if they're living in an area where they don't trust the police, especially people who don't trust the police anyway. I think the recent events show that all of these pro cop people don't know what the hell they're talking about. Your police department really depends. Their effectiveness depends on how well the community interacts with them. And this Broward County Sheriff's Department appears to have been, run by a bunch of morons. Morons, complete morons. And you can go from one city to another. The police department's effectiveness totally changes. That's why the Second Amendment is so important. Of course, there's other ways to defend yourself. I think people should learn martial arts, for example, or how to or develop a different game plan. Maybe owning other weapons that are not firearms. I don't know. Would you want to carry a baseball bat in your car? It's an option. I don't see why it's not an option. People play baseball, right? So if you want to carry a baseball bat in your car and be prepared to beat the shit out of somebody who attacks you, I guess it's an option. But you can't walk around with a baseball bat. That's not exactly socially acceptable in most situations. Uh, you could have a dangerous dog go around with you, right? You can't go eat with it in a restaurant, but yeah, you could walk around with a Rottweiler or something. It's there are alternatives to owning a firearm. It's just stop those people that think that it's ridiculous to own one and that you should depend on the police. Shut the fuck up already. The police are idiots in many parts of the country. Okay, so some police are good. A lot of police are morons. A lot of them are morons. A lot of police officers Um, I think they get into the job mostly because it does have stable pay, and because there aren't a lot of options in their area. Uh, do I think that they don't get the respect that they deserve? Sometimes, but I'm not going to be one of these people that says, "Oh, I stand with law enforcement all the time." No, if police were really the guardians of society that we hold them up to be, there won't be so many cases of them having misconduct as happened in Baltimore recently, which is a legitimate. It's a legitimate problem what they did there. I think they were planting evidence, and I think in some cases taking not customer, but the property of arrested people. I didn't really read into it, but yeah, there needs to be really scrutiny into how well these police are behaving in the country. But there's police departments that perform very well. How about in Dallas, Texas? They said before that shooting where some of them were killed. I think 5 were killed in that Dallas police shooting. I think it was 2016, summer of 2016. People were saying, well, yeah, the Dallas Police Department is actually performing very well and strengthening ties with the community. Well, there's obviously places in the country where that's not true. St. Louis, L.A., New York City. There's really a serious police problem in the country where I think that depends on trust being developed between the community and the police. I've had arguments with Number 80, who you've seen on my show, about community policing, which I think there can be something like that active, but that doesn't replace actual professional investigation. You need professional investigation for certain crimes. In my city, there have been 3 serial killers, nothing to do with guns, that were going around and murdering women. That were typically very poor black women. I'm talking about Anthony Sowell and Michael Madison and the third guy who was arrested recently. Those people, it took a long time for police to arrest them, partially because the communities didn't trust them. Also, probably because the police department here isn't exactly uh, the best service. They don't give very good service. They don't get paid very much too. Okay, a lot of police officers don't get paid well. That's a problem. If you don't pay people, a respectable wage. In many cases, they're not going to perform well. And a police officer is not flipping burgers. A police officer does have to have at least the judgment to be able to discern between a threat and not a threat, violating a law and not violating a law. I think we can all agree on that. So, in closing, yeah, I think gun control is retarded. Um, People are always talking about, people don't need military grade weapons in order to protect themselves. That's not the point. You could have people who own military grade weapons who have military experience, but they're now civilians. So what? They're not supposed to own those weapons. That's really not that's not up to you to decide. I believe that should be decided by the strict interpretation of the law of the Constitution. The right to bear arms shall not be infringed. I don't care what Donald Trump says. I'm happy his daughter-in-law was not killed or harmed by this idiot who mailed cornstarch to her. But this is an example of the fact that um, there are people, and this guy, from other reports besides the Massachusetts TV station report, ABC7, this is another person with radical left-wing views, pro-gun control views as well. The other guy, I don't think it was pro-gun control per se, but David Hodgkinson, the guy who tried to kill Steve Scalise, yeah, that guy was is a far left person. And what's going to happen if at some point the media, they can stigmatize far left people the same way they can stigmatize far right people. If they deem you to be the wrong type of left wing person, because there's kind of the left wing media, which are kind of shills. Some people would even say they're not really the left, but that's a different discussion. They can stigmatize you guys just as well as they can stigmatize people on the right. So in this society where the media just picks villains in order to fit its agenda, it picks heroes in order to fit its agenda, and tells you to trust law enforcement at the same time as it says that law enforcement is corrupt and racist. I think that people should look at why the Second Amendment was originally included in the Bill of Rights, and realize that our society was meant to be one where the individual was given every tool, every legal tool, to maintain his autonomy from the federal government. So that's it. Please subscribe, share, like, comment. Check out my new BitChute, which is actually, it's taking these videos and it's automatically updating them into there. I'm going to try to get some of my more important videos onto the BitChute because I'm seeing that it is really working in kind of an interesting manner. The viewership is just working differently, so I like what I'm seeing over there. But yeah, YouTube, you can still find me here, and that's all I have to say. So have a great evening. This will probably put this up in the morning. So see you then.